This is Pastor Nathaniel, and I am actually streaming from my backyard. I live on a lake, so I'm out here on the dock, and I am going to talk to you and bring God's message for today actually from home. Now, we are here in Atlanta under a shelter-in-place rule, which basically says unless you have an essential business, you need to stay at home. And churches are not considered under the law as an essential business. Now, personally, I think it's essential. I think the Word of God is absolutely essential, and to teach the people, it's absolutely essential. But the government does not consider churches to be essential. Now, I first of all fully understand why we don't need to assemble, because people are getting sick. There's just no two ways about it. And churches have had some of the highest amount of infection because the people are close together, grouped together, hugging, shaking, all that kind of stuff. And it's simply not healthy. So I understand that. But we're not even allowed to go to the church to talk, to stream. So I'm doing this from my backyard. So here comes a different kind of message. You can't stop God's word. It's going to go forth no matter what. So I'm coming to you from my backyard, standing out here on the dock, and that's just fine. The key is, regardless of circumstances, do not fail to get your word in. And another thing, the last message, I didn't even mention anything about an offering, which I may be the only pastor in the whole country who forgot to mention the offering. You know, I'm not really focused on that. I believe as long as you do what God has instructed you to do, He'll take care of you. But I do need to let you know, yes, we do need to continue to support God's house. We do need to donate. So right now, I want you to bow your heads just as we're in the sanctuary, and you ask God, Lord, what shall I give? Right now, there's work going on at the church. We've ripped up all of the tile in the main hall. We're putting down new carpet. So the expenses are still rolling on. All the lights, all that stuff is still going on. So the expenses are still going on. We're actually, as I mentioned, we're in remodeling phase in the church. So it's still going on. Bow your heads right now and just ask God for 10 seconds, Lord, what shall I give? Amen. Now go to iwanttogive.com. Give what God has instructed you to give. Just because the church is not open does not mean your giving stops. So go to iwanttogive.com and give what God has instructed you to give. Now, as you know, I am in the middle of a series that God directed me to begin before all of this virus stuff began, called the Plagues of Egypt. God knew it was coming. He had me preaching on the plagues of Egypt, and right now we're in the middle of the biggest plague America has faced in modern times. It's not over. The worst of it is not over, and it's not the last plague that's coming, and there are multiple plagues that even go along with this. The last message, I talked about the plague of frogs and how it was simply an outreach or an outcropping of the existing, turning the water into blood, and it changes the environment. You got all these frogs. Again, in Exodus 8:16, which is where we're dealing with today, and it's the plague of lice. Now, some versions say lice, some versions say gnats, but regardless, they're basically small insects that had infested the entire land.
The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, stretch out your rod and strike the dust of the earth, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt." They did so, and Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and there were lice on man and on animal. All the dust of the earth became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. The magicians tried with their enchantments to produce lice, but they couldn't. There were lice on man and on animal. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, "This is God's finger." And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he didn't listen to them, as the Lord had spoken. You're listening to The Bible Speaker from thebiblespeaker.com.
And I'm not going to talk about today the lice. I want to talk about what the magicians said about the lice. That's really the whole key. What the magicians of Egypt said about the lice. Now, when you understand, first of all, when Moses and Aaron went to see Pharaoh, and they had the staff with them, and they threw their staff out on the ground, the staff turned into a snake. Well, the magicians of Egypt brought in their staffs, and they threw their staffs on the ground, and they also turned into snakes. But Moses and Aaron's staff ate up the magician's staff. God's stuff is always stronger than the imposter. That's one thing for you to always remember. God's stuff is always stronger than the imposter. So here we had the staff of Aaron ate up the staff of the magicians. But the magicians did produce the same effect or the same miracle. Next we had Aaron, along with his brother Moses, turned the water into blood. The magicians of Egypt duplicated that same thing. They turned water into blood. Then we had the frogs, and Moses and Aaron brought frogs out of the river that covered the land. The magicians of Egypt did the same thing, and they brought up frogs out of the river. But when it got to lice, in Exodus 8:16, it says that when they brought the lice up and the land was covered with lice, the magicians of Egypt could not duplicate that effect. They could not do anything with the lice. And what the magicians of Egypt went to Pharaoh, and they told Pharaoh this: look, we can't do anything with this. We can't do this. We can't duplicate this. Our arts and our secret sorcery stuff won't do anything. We can't do this. But this is the main thing that they said. The magicians of Egypt told Pharaoh, this is God. This is God. So when you understand about not just the plague, but when you understand about all of life, about who controls everything, who set the world in motion, who has the sun come up at night and the moon go through the phases in the sky, when you understand who breathed the breath of life into your body, who gave you your spirit, your intellect, who gave you your heart, when you understand this is God. And that's the point about this plague that's important. This is God. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about who exactly and whether this plague came from a lab or whether it was bioengineered. You know, there's some stuff China says the U.S. military created it, and the U.S. said it came from China. It's all, I don't know the truth of that. And I doubt if the public will ever know the truth. But one thing I do know, this is God. You see, God even controlled Pharaoh. It was God who hardened Pharaoh's heart. It was God who made Pharaoh where he would not let the children of Israel go. It says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. So God even influenced, and Pharaoh at the time was a super president. He had absolute authority. He didn't have to go through Congress and the Senate and the Supreme Court. What Pharaoh said was law. So he was essentially a super president. So God controlled, all right, that's a bird just saying an amen to that. But God controlled Pharaoh. This is God. And see, when you understand even about this plague, whether it was bioengineered, whether it's straight out of nature, whether it's some mutation, no matter where it came from, because God influenced Pharaoh, the king, the president, the super president, God influenced him. When you understand that simple point, this is God. So when you see all this stuff about this virus and all this stuff about this plague, and yeah, it's going to be a whole lot more deaths coming, but when you realize, when you go through that Bible, oh, God caused a lot of death. Now, he's the bringer of life. God is love, but in order to correct and to bring balance to some things, God killed a whole lot of people. That's just bottom line. God killed a whole lot of people. That's why he said, I will put none of these diseases that I put on the Egyptians on you. So God put some of them diseases on folk. Yes, he did. No question about it. The word says so. So when we understand about all this stuff, this is God. And that's why I'm not worried about this stuff, because I recognize this is God. The worst that can happen to me is that it kills me. That's the worst that can happen to me. But if I'm right with God, I'm going on to heaven. I'm going on to be with Jesus. So if I'm right with God, the worst that can happen to me is I go to God a little bit earlier. That's the worst that can happen to me. So when I understand this is God, I don't walk in fear. Now, I'm not walking in foolishness. Now, I travel. I go a lot of places. I go to work every day. Even though they have a stay-at-home order, I work at Bronner Brothers. Bronner Brothers manufactures a hand sanitizer called Germless. You can go to the website and see it at getgermless.com. So Bronner Brothers manufactures hand sanitizers, which makes us an essential business. So I have a legal right, and I'm executive vice president of Bronner Brothers. I have a legal right to go back and forth to work every day, and I'm fully within my law. But even at Bronner Brothers, we don't do foolish stuff. We maintain a 6-foot separation with everybody in the company. Most of the people in manufacturing, they have on face masks, and we have an infrared thermometer where everyone who walks in the business, they put a dot on their head and check the temperature. So everybody who's in the building, no one has a temperature, everybody has on face masks, and everybody is 6 feet apart. So we even follow wise medical advice even within business, just like it ought to be done within church. Now, I believe God can protect you with everything, but the sermon I preached 2 weeks ago talked about how God gave us guidelines on dealing with plagues, and he told you 2 things: wash up real good and put them folk out the camp until they were clean and healed. So God had social separation and he had hand washing. So everything the government is telling you to do is exactly what God told you to do when you're dealing with a plague situation. So we follow that. But I'm not worried about this plague because I understood and I understand what the magicians of Egypt understood. And they understood this one thing: this is God. And when you understand this is God, it changes everything about how you feel and how you react. And I can tell you, people, this is no time for you to get out of favor with God. Now, see, the world will have it where you can't get to church. Then you'll get there, you're going to watch TV. You may not even watch the stream, and it's going to be a whole lot of folks say, well, I ain't got to give now because I'm not there. The pastor's not going to see me now. Nobody's going to see me go down and give. Look, this is not the time to get out of favor with God. So you make sure you get your tithes and offerings in. And now, look, you all know I don't focus on that a whole lot, but I know a lot of people are going to fall off simply because they're not there. And they think the obligation ends and nobody can see them. And you become out of favor. See, this thing is it's an economic thing. That's one of the plagues that's hitting us real hard. It's the economic disaster. I'm not worried about the economy. I'm really, really not. Because I believe God controls. I've seen it. I believe it with every fiber of my being. God controls money. He absolutely does. He talks about the crops of your field, and these are the blessings and these are the curses. He will bless the crops of your field. Look, this has been the worst economic month in literally the history of the United States. This has been the worst month. This month we just came, it's been the worst month in the history of the United States. Do you know our business broke all records? We did nearly double what our normal monthly volume is. And everybody around the company wondering, how did this happen? See, everybody in my company, they normally get a bonus when they do certain criteria, but anytime we break a record, their bonuses are double. Do you know their bonuses were doubled in the month that just ended, in the big plague month? The bonuses were double. He said, how did that happen? We don't even know. We don't know why everybody was placing so many orders, why our business went through the roof. They don't know, but I do. Let me tell you why. That was God. That's why. So God can handle you. He can protect you. He can put a hedge around you regardless of what else in the world is going on. God got you, but you got to be right with God. So this is not the time for you to walk away from the church, not do what you're supposed to do. This is not the time for that. If any time, you need to be more on point now than ever. Because when you understand this is God. And see the reason the magicians of Egypt knew it, because you see, they were masters of all of the magical arts, like the magicians today. You see, you can fool an average person with some illusions of magic, but you can't fool a professional musician, because a professional, you can't fool a professional, I said musician, no, I meant magician. Sometimes they may be the same thing. But anyway, you can't fool a professional magician. They know the tricks. And see, there are two techniques that magicians use to fool folk. It is the technique of distraction. And then there is the technique of illusion. The first technique of distraction, they're always doing something that takes your attention away from what they're really doing. They'll wave a magic wand when they're really doing something with this hand that you don't see, and you're watching the wand. Or they have a beautiful assistant that's dressed in this tight little outfit, so you watching the assistant, you don't even see what the magician is doing. They use a distracting technique to always draw your attention away from what they'll use this hand, and you watching this hand right here, not realizing what they're doing with this hand over here on the right. And while you're watching one hand, they're doing it's distraction. The magicians of Egypt knew all of the techniques. Then there is illusion. The magicians of Egypt knew what they were doing, and they knew all of the techniques of illusion. So they understood distraction, they understood illusion. And see, that's what the world is doing to you right now. That's why a lot of the church people are falling away, because they distracted. And then you got an illusion, and most of that illusion right now is fear. So the world is got all this illusion about, oh, I'm scared, this stuff gonna kill me, this stuff gonna mess me up. So you're under both a distraction and you're under an illusion, and you have forgotten the promises of God. If you're faithful to God, God got you. This is God. So when you understand this is God, you're just not worried about this stuff. So the magicians of Egypt knew. They understood distraction and they understood illusion. So when they saw Aaron and Moses, they said, this ain't no distraction. We're looking at, we know, we're professionals. We know this is not distraction. This is not illusion. This is real. So they knew. And they knew if it wasn't distraction and if it wasn't illusion, there was only one other alternative. And that's why they went to Pharaoh and they said, this is God. So when you understand that, it's going to change how you react. This is God. Every time you see all them figures up on the TV, and some of you sitting there watching the TV all day, all night, and you're seeing these numbers just tick up and up and up and up, and how many people infected in the world, how many people dying, how many in the U.S. infected, how many dying, how much stuff shutting down, the economic disaster. You're going to see the stock market go through the floor. So when you see all of this stuff, remember those three words. This is God. Jesus said, look, he said, don't be afraid of them who can kill just the body. This stuff can't do, the maximum this can do is kill your body, mess up your finances, and mess up your body. It can do that. He said, don't be afraid of that. He said, you be afraid of the one who can kill both body and soul. They can take care of your eternity. See, this is the point. I'm not afraid of all of this stuff as long as I'm right with God. I am only concerned about being right with God. Now, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do in natural wisdom and natural logic. I'm going to keep my body in real good shape. So I'm going to be, if the virus does come to me, I'm just going to laugh at it, because my immune system is going to be strong. We developed this product called 7 Shields at 7shields.com. Go there, get you a bottle. It'll help you strengthen your immune system so you be able to laugh at this virus. Simple as that, because it's not a matter of whether you get the virus or not. It's a matter of how strong your immune system is. Look, the stats are, the experts, the governor of California said in 2 months, 25 million people in California are going to have this virus. And only 40 million people in the whole state. So that basically over 60% of the people going to have this virus. Estimates are that 60 to 70% of people going to have this virus. So it's not a matter if you're going to get the virus. Chances are you will. What matters is whether you're going to be able to resist it. See, it's not a matter of whether you're going to face temptation. That's not the question, whether you're going to face temptation. The question is, will you succumb to temptation? It's not a matter of whether the devil going to come after you. Yeah, he coming after you. That's not a matter of whether the devil is going to come after you. What matters is whether you got Jesus. See, these are the real questions. And even with the virus, it doesn't matter whether you're going to come in contact with the virus. They're trying to flatten the curve. What that means is they're just trying to keep so many people from getting it all at one time. They still know you're going to likely get it. They're just trying to keep you from getting it all at one time. So whenever you do encounter it, you need to make sure you're strong. Whenever you do encounter the devil, you need to make sure you're strong. Whenever you do encounter temptation, you need to make sure you're strong. Simple as that. And where you are weak, that's where you need faith, and that's where you need Jesus, and that's where you need the power of God. But he gives you wisdom to tell you to get yourself strong. That's why he told the folk back in the Old Testament, when there's a plague among them, wash and put them folk with the plague or with the disease out of the camp. Separate them and wash up. He told you what to do. He didn't just tell them just pray. No, he told you to do some wise stuff. So this is the point. What the magicians of Egypt recognized. All of the stuff, and they knew it. Pharaoh didn't accept it. See, there'll be some people right now, just like Pharaoh, and they will not accept this is God. And they will not do what they should do to relieve the plague. And as a result, everybody under them suffered because the leader didn't do what they needed to do. And that's the point. It works that way in a family. It works that way in a business. It works that way in a church. It works that way in a nation. It works that way in a planet. So we've got to do what God has told us to do. Because whether you realize it or not, I realize it. And I believe it with every fiber of my being. This is God. And when you know that, and when you believe that, and more importantly, when you act on that. Because if you believe it and you know it and you don't act on it, you might as well not know it and you might as well not believe it. See, if you believe that cigarette smoking is bad for your health, even though you may know it and even though you may believe it, if you still keep smoking, you might as well not know it and not believe it. You're actually better off because now you don't have the guilt associated with all the smoking. So if you know something and if you believe it and if you don't act on it, it's actually better for you psychologically and even spiritually, if you just don't even know it, because at least you're happy and free and you don't have the guilt dealing with it. So when you know this is God, and I know this is God, regardless of whether or not it came through a man or men or an organization or a government, regardless of that, because God influences and controls the king and the president and the groups and all of that. He knows it. He can stop it, any other stuff. He can stop it and he can start it. I just know that. So I know, just like the magicians of Egypt, this is God. And when you know this is God, act like you know it. Act like you know. Don't be worrying about all this fear. Act like you know this is God. So if you know it, act like it. And I'm out here right now, and I am enjoying the sun and the beauty of what God has done. Because I know, just like the virus is God, so is all of this. All of this. This is God. And the first of the series of the plagues of Egypt had to do with Jacob. And it was called bumps over blessings. The first plague is not recognizing your blessing and focusing on all of the bumps. This virus is a bump, but you're still so blessed. Regardless of what happened, you're still so blessed. If I contracted the virus and died tomorrow, I'm still blessed. I've had a blessed life. It's been beautiful. I can't complain about a thing, and I'll be going on to live with Jesus. I focus on my blessings, not my bumps. And there's going to be a lot of bumps that's going to happen with this. But there's a whole bunch of blessings. And sometimes your joy and your peace and your relationship with God will be on your thankfulness and your obedience and your faith. This is Pastor Nathaniel. From his backyard, I'm staying at home, but I'm at peace. And I'm going to stay at peace regardless of what happens, because I recognize and realize this is God. Now, you can send this to anybody. Just go to brothersoftheword.com. You can send this sermon absolutely free to a friend or relative or anyone who's going through a whole lot of this stuff, and they need to hear and they need to know this is God. And don't forget, just because you're at home, you go to iwanttogive.com. Don't you get out of obedience with God now, of all of the time. Don't you get out of obedience with God now. Do what God has led you to do. And if you didn't stop and bow your head for 10 seconds, you do it right now. Make sure that you stay in obedience with your time, your talent, and your treasure. Spend time with God. If you can't go to church, you start increasing your prayer time. Increase your scriptural study time. You can go to brothersoftheword.com. We've got thousands of sermons that you can listen to absolutely free. Listen to some of the old stuff, because all of our sermons, they're timeless. They don't have to do anything right now. You can listen to a sermon I did 20 years ago. It's going to be just as relevant right now, because we got the same issues now that we did 20 years ago, and 200 years ago, and 2,000 years ago. So go to brothersoftheword.com. Listen, substitute your time that you would have been driving and spending in church. Spend your time with God. Don't let your offerings go down just because you're not in the building. Do what you're supposed to do, because if it's any time you needed God more than any other time, you need his protection right now. Thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. From Brothers